you want to ask people to chat?
So we're ready to begin now. My manager said we're moving off the mainframe. We have about 50 attendees, and we're expecting a bunch more, but we have a lot of material, and we only have an hour. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If folks join in, they'll be able to see where we are in the introductory material as we get to the meat of the matter. Because there are so many attendees, I don't want to open microphones. We would get a lot of ambient noise, and it would disturb our ability to communicate. So what I invite you to do is the GoToWebinar tool has a chat session that allows you to post questions as the presentation proceeds. So that would be your best method for letting me know that you have a question. You can also raise your hand. I'm going to stop occasionally to gather questions, and we also have a series of polls that are going to allow you to interact with us to be able to give us some feedback. So we're going to use all of those different techniques.
And one note on the polls, when I put the polls together, I put them together to ask, sort of to keep people engaged. That's the primary reason for doing the polls, and also for us to be able to give you guys feedback on how other organizations and sort of like, you know, what are the statistics on the people that are people joining us today, if they're in the same boat as you are. But one of the things I want to make sure everyone knows who is on this webinar, we are being extremely careful with the registration data. I asked everyone to supply their names and their email addresses, and just because we've spoken to some organizations where this discussion is very sensitive, any of your poll answers as well as your contact information will not be shared with anyone. When we're finished with the webinar, we're done. And I want to make sure you guys know that. So, so go ahead, Frank.
So with that, we're going to go ahead and start. My manager says we're moving off the mainframe. Our agenda today, first of all, a welcome, explaining who the Fillmore Group is and why we're having this discussion. Then a question is the mainframe technology obsolete? We'll talk about the current array of facilities that are available on the Z Systems platform, so you understand what it is that's on the box today that people are questioning its viability. And then we'll talk about some ways that you can push back on we don't need the mainframe anymore, it's obsolete, or we can't use it, it's not valuable. So we'll talk about financial justifications for using the mainframe, continuing to deploy it to meet your enterprise requirements. Talk about the skills challenge, challenges for migration. That is, if someone says we're going to move off the mainframe, what is the real cost of approaching that? And then finally, different modernization alternatives, different ways that you can affect change within the envelope of the mainframe platform and get greater value out of it. So the Fillmore Group is an IBM Analytics software reseller. We resell both on DB2 for LUW as well as Z, and a number of other IBM InfoSphere products, what we call data interoperability. So we work with the IBM InfoSphere Data Replication Federation, some of the Optum products. We've been doing data management, technical consulting, and staff augmentation. We are in our 30th year. We're an IBM training partner since 1994, and we were founded in 1987, headquartered in Towson, Maryland. I'm what is known as a DB2 Gold consultant. My colleague Kim May, whom you've heard here, is an IBM champion for analytics, and I'm the founder and president of the Fillmore Group, and I want to let you know that that picture that you see on your screen, I'm about 20 pounds lighter. The black is supposed to be slimming, but it didn't work in that case. So the Wall Street Journal had an article on October 18th of 2016, so just a little less than a month ago, that specified that IBM's profit and sales have slipped. They are the 18th straight quarter of declining revenues, and a lot of that was attributed to the weakness in the mainframe. So what are we hearing? Actually, I have a question. Let me see before we go into that. So the first question is from Peter Scarpinato, And will the slides be available? Yes, we're going to post both the slides and a recording of the webcast on our blog probably tomorrow, but no later than AM Monday morning. So you'll have the materials as well as the discussion. Thanks, Peter. So what we're hearing in the marketplace, and we have heard these from customers, we've heard them from IBMers, we've heard them from information technology leadership, CIOs, CTOs, that the mainframe is too old. Mainframe is too expensive. We can't find skilled mainframe resources, and we're going to migrate off the mainframe within 3 years. And I think this is where okay, actually I'm going to go to poll number 1. We want to get some idea of who is on the webcast, and then we'll drop into poll number 2. So we're going to find out. Hang on for a second. So I'm launching the poll. You should see the pop-up on your screen. If you could take a moment and identify IBM Z Systems customer, IBM are supporting Z Systems customers, business partners, or I'm waiting for the SQL Server to finish rebooting.
% said they're waiting for SQL Server.
Not a surprise. So about 3/4 of the folks on the phone are Z Systems end customers, which is sort of who we wanted to focus on.
We're a little worried when there's too many IBMers that are worried about getting off the mainframe.
Yeah, that's always a bad sign. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll so we can move on. And I'm going to follow up with our second poll regarding the screen that we're looking at now. What have you been hearing regarding the mainframe in your shops? The mainframe is too old, too expensive, we can't find resources, or we're going to be off the mainframe in 3 years. And it looks like it's pretty well distributed. 40, almost 50% are saying that hearing that the mainframe is too expensive. About 1/3 is saying that we can't find the resources, and about 15% are saying that we're going to migrate off the mainframe in 3 years. And it's amazing how consistent that is. That
the 3 years.
That the 3 years. Apparently, yeah, that people are throwing a dart at the board, and that's what they're coming up with. Okay, well, thank you for both of those. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and move on. So this is old. If you're an old-time rock and roller, a rock and roll fan like I am, these are photos of Desert Trip that occurred just about a month ago. This is where the Stones, McCartney, Neil Young, Bob Dylan, along with Roger Waters and The Who performed. So old is not necessarily bad. As I pointed out, the rumors are that each of these acts got paid anywhere from $5 to $20 million for 2 sets over 2 different weekends, which is not bad pay. So old can actually work in your favor. So in all seriousness, let's look at the current Z Systems platform, what the Z System offers today. So the current flagship is IBM Z13. In terms of hardware, it runs ZOS and Linux, as well as VM and VSE. The current version of DB2 for ZOS is DB2.12, just announced at the World of Watson conference a few weeks ago. IBM expands the capabilities of DB2 for ZOS with the IBM DB2 Analytics Accelerator, the IDAA. And it's important to understand that the IDAA is undergoing a radical re-engineering right now. So IBM is pulling out Postgres, which has been the database engine that they inherited from Netezza when they purchased the Netezza appliance. They're incorporating Spark and their resilient data set technology. They are incorporating new means of deployment into the IDAA form factor so that instead of needing to wheel a refrigerator-sized box onto your mainframe platform floor in the data center, you can actually deploy a virtualized IDAA using something called a software-defined environment. You can do that in your own data center in something like Linux, or you may be able to deploy that on a cloud platform. So it could be what IBM is referring to as a hybrid cloud, where the IBM Z13 with DB212 resides in your data center, but the IDAA is actually housed in a cloud platform. So it eases the implementation burden and the ability to deploy the IDAA. I'm assuming that most people who are Z Systems customers and IBMers know what the IDAA is, but it actually brings real-time analytics to the DB2 for ZOS platform. In addition to that, the DB2 Analytics Accelerator Loader actually extends those analytic capabilities to things like IMS and VSAM. So you may have a lot of legacy data, transaction processing data for things like airline reservations and credit card authorizations in IMS, and then VSAM, the old index file system standby. But all of this data can be acted on and implemented into the IBM DB2 Analytics Accelerator, so you can unlock that data and get access to it not only from the DB2 for ZOS SQL API, but also moving forward, IBM's intention is to open this up to data scientists and IT architects through different APIs. So this is the current story today of what the Z Systems platform looks like. Now, notice that I had up on the screen the little penguin and the spark star. We're trying to figure out what the cute mascot would be for the IDAA, and this is a list that Kim put together of all of the different orangutans, kangaroos, turtles, platypuses, etc. We just don't have the platypi. Is that the plural? So again, moving forward, just injecting some levity. It seems that one of the ways that you know you're not working on a platform that's really old and mature is if it has a cute mascot, like an elephant.
Exactly.
So that brings us to poll number 3. We're going to talk about some of the supported APIs. So many people on the call will be familiar with the COBOL CICS paradigm that has been in use for the last 30 years. However, there are a series of scripting languages, PHP, Ruby on Rails, Python, Perl. There are the software development environments, integrated development environments, the IDEs, so Hibernate, Ibatis, JSON, JavaScript object notation, as well as Microsoft, so .NET data providers, Visual Studios, and then application servers like WebSphere and Apache, all can access the mainframe platform in a variety of different forms. So the question that we wanted to ask now is, and I'm very curious about Python, because I heard that Python is the Power Builder of 2016. If you remember what Power Builder is, it was a 4th generation language that was delivered probably 20 to 25 years ago, and everything was going to be rewritten in Power Builder. So what we want to do is find out which of these APIs are you using in production applications?
If any.
If any. So this is just a straight up yes/no question. And again, it looks pretty well divided, about 50-50. No, actually.
That's good to see.
It is good to see. So closer to 60-40 in terms of the scripting languages, the IDEs, Java, application web servers, and .NET providers. Yeah, just about 60-40.
So that's good. So it's not as if everyone is doing.
COBOL, CICS, VSAM, yeah, the
Exactly.
sort of older style that you have redeployed.
Exactly. And that's an important point when you're trying to argue for the mainframe.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I wanted to highlight here is something called ZOS Connect. So this is the capability to use RESTful APIs and in JSON, JavaScript object notation, to be able to access a variety of different back-end services and data repositories within ZOS. So CICS, IMS, and DB2. ZOS Connect uses the Liberty profile for ZOS, so a subset of WAS, but it allows you to be able to use JSON to invoke something like a CICS transaction. So your developers can use the environments that they're familiar with. The other thing that I saw at the World of Watson is that within the Data Studio platform, I can click on a stored procedure within DB2 and deploy it as a service so that it can be deployed. So there are a lot of different ways today to be able to take advantage of the existing transaction processing business logic that you have and be able to deploy that using other paradigms for things like mobile applications and use the APIs that your developers are familiar with. The other thing that's very important to understand is that, and I'm gonna get my pen here. Drawing tools, pen. So actually, if you can see that yellow circle that I'm drawing right now on the screen, within DB212, the JSON APIs can be used to access DB2 directly without the Liberty profile. IBM heard that some customers were reluctant to deploy the Liberty profile on ZOS, and so there you can now move directly from JSON into DB2 and be able to deploy applications like stored procedures, as I mentioned before, without having to install the Liberty profile on the mainframe platform. There we go. So, some other noteworthy features of the mainframe. So capacity, Citi is deploying 150,000 transactions per second. There is a retailer who was not identified by IBM, but I'm suspecting it was Walmart, that serves 250 million customers per week. The resiliency that's available within the Z platform, parallel sysplex, so the shared disk, transaction processing, if one node fails, the other takes over, load balancing between applications, and then the geographically dispersed parallel sysplex, so the ability to actually deploy the transaction processing over a large geographic area. Customers like the Construction Bank of China, the CBC, is using this to great effect these days. The virtualization features, the ability to deploy in the cloud, as we mentioned earlier with the IDAA, gives you the ability to have different form factors, deploy the IDAA, for example, as a Docker component. So all of these are available today. Now, you may be saying we're about 15 minutes into the presentation, almost 20 minutes, and so all we're doing is talking about the mainframe today and its capabilities, and you might be saying, well, I know all of that, or I know some of that, but you're sort of preaching to the choir. But what's important about this presentation is to understand the capabilities that are available today, because many people who are not familiar with the mainframe are calling the shots. The CTOs, the CIOs, the enterprise data architects, they may not be familiar with all of these capabilities, all of the APIs that are available today. Their mental picture of the mainframe may be still rooted in CICS, VCM, DB2 for ZOS, and they're the ones that we need to carry this story forward to, and that's why it's included in the presentation materials and will be available in the recording. So if you can get their ear, you can say, these are the things that you may not know about the mainframe today. So the Z Systems landscape. Over 4,000 IBM customers' data originates on the Z System platform. And many of those, 4,000 doesn't sound like a lot when you compare it to something like SQL Server, but these are the largest of the large enterprises. 70 to 80% of the world's corporate transactional data originates on Z Systems platform. So the question becomes, how do we take advantage of that? What has been the mindset of a lot of people who look at the mainframe is, well, we need to move that data off. Well, if 80% of your data is already on the Z Systems landscape, is it cost effective, or does it make sense to try to move that data someplace else? To move it to Teradata, to move it to Netezza, to move it to Oracle Exadata, to perform things like analytics, or even to rewrite applications and rebuild your business logic to do your transaction processing. If the data is already in place and you already have systems that are working successfully, doesn't it make sense to try to take advantage of everything that's in place, as opposed to starting with a blank sheet of paper all over again? The data does not have to be moved from the mainframe to do analytics, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more in a second. So analytics on the Z Systems advantages: you have a hybrid platform to bring analytics to the data instead of bringing the data to the analytics. That means less data movement. That means fewer copies of the data. That means less cost to the enterprise for ETL products. It reduces data latency, so I can do analytics within transactions, both for things like fraud detection, so that before I process that credit card a transaction, I can say that appears to be fraudulent and stop it in flight, rather than moving that to a Teradata box 2 days from now and doing the analytics and say, oh yeah, we probably lost money on that one. Reduce the data latency, minimize the cost, and improve the data governance and security. So I have all of the data, both for analytics as well as transaction processing, existing within the same platform form factor, so I can apply the same rules. We, the Fillmore Group, have worked on data movement technologies. I talked about replication before, but in many of the cases, one of the biggest things that we struggle with is repeating or re-implementing the security mechanisms that are already built into Top Secret or RACF or ACF2 on the mainframe in other platforms, so that you have the same level of security. In many cases, the data breaches that are occurring are not occurring in the in-house transaction processing systems, but are actually occurring on what I call the edge systems, where the data has been copied. We talked to one large federal government customer that has 13 different copies of their main customer information system to be used for different purposes, and that is just an invitation for data inconsistencies at best and risks to their data at worst. So IBM Z Analytics offers a single environment, both for transaction processing and analytics. IBM has told its customers for the last 25 years, try to separate by putting your analytics processing and your transaction processing, isolate those on different platforms so that analytics doesn't interfere with or slow down your transaction processing. And now today the messaging is 180 different. You can do both on the same platform by using the hybrid capabilities of the IDAA combined with your transaction processing, such as IMS and DB2 for ZOS. And again, you improve the governance and security and minimize cost and complexity. IBM, I have the background information if anybody is interested. There are lots of notes behind this, but IBM says that you can achieve significant cost savings by incorporating your analytics on the Z Systems platform rather than moving it off platform. And the Z Systems plus the IBM Analytics Accelerator, IBM DB2 Analytics Accelerator, delivers 2 times faster throughput and 4 times better price performance on your investment. So that brings us to let me see. No, I think I have one more slide before I want to talk about the IDAA question. No, I guess not. Let me go ahead and open that poll. So within the bounds of the discussion that we have had so far, we have not discussed the IDAA a lot in this presentation. I want to ask if your organization has considered the IDAA. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll right now. So the questions are, yes, we already own an IDAA, we've looked at it but did not buy, or no, currently don't use an IBM DB2 Analytics Accelerator.
We consider the acquisition of an IDAA to be one of the key factors in terms of validating for management teams that you are invested and confident in the future of the mainframe. For organizations that have acquired IDAAs, they seem to be more, I want to say all in. They're not necessarily all in. No one is. It's technology. But customers that have investigated and have said, oh yes, the IDAA is really going to be enabling us to use the mainframe for HTAP. That's modern.
And explain what HTAP is. You use the acronym.
Okay, HTAP is the Hybrid Transaction Analytic Processing. It's basically an acronym that Gardner came up with that says that you are running both transaction workloads, OLTP, and analytics on the same box.
Very good. So the poll is still going on. We'll give people a second to answer the questions, but sort of evenly divided between yes, we own an IDAA, and the last two answers, which are we looked at it but did not buy, or no, just don't have it. Interesting, about 50%.
Yeah, so this is a very, I mean, obviously this is a very small sample size. This is not all System Z customers in the world, but my take on it is I can see right now we've got 38% did not buy an IDAA, 20% said that they looked and didn't buy. You guys at 58%, the two groups there are probably the ones most at risk of in 3 years being off the mainframe, in my opinion.
Wow, that's kind of scary. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and get back to our presentation. So we're going to shift, we're going to pivot here. So we have been talking about the current Z Systems platform and what it offers. Now we're going to talk about where the drumbeat may be coming from your management teams regarding what to do next in terms of investing in the Z Systems platform or moving off. So the key stakeholders within your enterprise, I mentioned before, Chief Information Officer, Chief Technology Officer, Enterprise IT Architect, and most importantly, somebody you probably don't talk to on a regular basis, is the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer. There is a biblical allusion I like to use. It always drives Kim's nuts, which is one of the reasons that I like to use it, is in the book of Exodus, there arose a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. Won't go into what all that means, but if you've heard it before, you'll know what I'm talking about. Many of these roles that I just mentioned are being filled by people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who may not have grown up on the mainframe platform. Operates as a black box within their organization. They don't know it. They don't understand it. And so their take on it is it's something that we need to get rid of. These are people who are making the decisions, who are making the budgets, and making the organizational directional calls that don't have a really good understanding. The first half of the presentation is directed at them. This is when we post this on our blog. You're welcome to download this and share this with the folks in your organization if you have the opportunity to do that. Let me see. I also have a question. Let me go back. So the first question from my good friend Al Di Giovanni, assuming that a majority of CIOs and CTOs never developed or supported a mainframe platform, are they going to manage to the platform they knowing and comfortable? What is IBM doing to educate and letting them know there is no risk? So yes, people stick with what they are familiar. That's one of the biases that we're trying to overcome here. It is not necessarily a rational bias, but it is definitely one that we need to deal with. It is incumbent upon IBM and business partners like the Fillmore Group to educate the people in those roles. I don't have a silver bullet for you. I mean, this webinar today is meant as one of the ways that we can get the word out. Kim, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've seen by being, first of all, IBM is very much supporting us in delivering this presentation. And one of the things that they have allowed us to do, and one of the things I would encourage anyone on here, particularly you, Al, is that if you guys need to have an executive go speak to one of your technical executives, let us know. We can coordinate that. We can arrange that. We all know IBM's revenues are down. We know sales teams are getting smaller. We know certain mainframe customers used to be the gold standard. They all had a systems engineer. They all had a sales rep. Not the case today. So if you don't know who your sales rep is, then, and we'll get to this in a little bit, let us know. We are sort of doing this as outreach for IBM on IBM's behalf. And if we can help you connect the dots and get a meeting scheduled, we'd be more than happy to do it.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, we've done that for one of our other financial services customers. We met at World of Watson for breakfast with this customer and the head of Z Analytics sales worldwide, and she made a commitment to actually go out and meet with their CIO. We can actually deliver the goods.
Yeah, if the outcome of this webinar is that we end up with a lot of IBM salespeople very busy saving mainframe customers, that's fine.
Yeah, that's sort of the purpose. A couple of other comments that I have up here really quickly from Mike Brawweiler. Thought the throughput on IDA was far faster, and absolutely it is in all of the tests that we've done. Larry Becker mentioned that he had answered the question as if he was a customer, even though he's a business partner, and some have bought the IDA and some have not, and that's part of the problems. I think Kim is pretty accurate, although it's kind of scary to put it in those stark terms. But yeah, the IDA can be a difference maker as to the stickiness of the mainframe within the enterprise. Customers are willing to do that.
And management's perception.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So appreciate the interactivity, appreciate the chat. So moving forward on the presentation, let me see one more question before we move on. So a question from Rick Mora: do you think IBM's cloud initiative is getting in the way of preserving the mainframe with its customers? We get the impression they are more willing to sell us the cloud. Absolutely. Absolutely. Ding, 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 ding. Yes. IBM, if the article that we referred to on the in the Wall Street Journal just about a month ago spoke to that directly, in that IBM's revenues are up in terms of sales to the cloud. We have our doubts about how squishy that is, and we won't go there.
Be careful.
Yes. But absolutely, IBM sees their future. We're going to talk about the cloud in a second, so let me go ahead with the presentation so we can address some of those questions. But absolutely a very pertinent one. So we're going to talk about cloud in a second. Let's talk about the financial justification first. And I think that this is sort of the meat of the matter, and this is a tough discussion that you're going to need to have with your CFO. But if you can have it, you may be able to turn the ship in terms of the viability of the mainframe within your shop. Kim?
And I think, and one of the things I want to be careful about here, we're not expecting everyone here on this presentation to go and say, hey, look, hey, boss's boss, I want to have an hour with you so I can explain why we should keep the mainframe. I don't think that's realistic for anyone. What we want to do is make sure you guys know what information is out there, what the story is that IBM can tell, what the story is that perhaps your business partner can tell, whoever it is you're working with, so that you can basically come to us afterward, go to your other business partner, go to your IBM rep and say, I need to have somebody go in and talk to my boss and explain this because we're in danger right now. Our mainframe utilization is being jeopardized.
Perfect. Thank you. So the first thing to do if you're doing a financial justification as to whether to keep or move off the mainframe is what I talk about, an apples-to-apples comparison for the actual cost of different platforms. So part of the problem that we have is that chargeback systems for mainframe utilization are in some cases 30 years old. They've been built up, and every possible cost was piled into the mainframe chargeback. So when you're paying per CPU second or you're paying per gigabyte of DASD, you are probably paying some people's salaries. You're probably paying for the systems programmers and the database administrators and the storage specialists and so forth. That's just the way that costing was done on the mainframe. So are salaries included in the mainframe chargeback algorithms? That's a question that you need to be able to ask. The same question you need to ask about distributed systems. So when a Linux server is put on the floor, or an Exadata supercluster or something like that, are these systems including the salaries of the sysadmins and the database administrators that manage them? And the answer is probably no, that those salaries are included as operational expenses, not as capital expenditures when the server is bought or when the server is deployed. So there is not an apples to apples comparison there, and that's something that you need to bring up to a CFO, because most CFOs understand a dollar is a dollar. And if they're not including the cost correctly, or they're not doing the comparison in an effective manner, then they're actually making bad decisions. So two examples that I want to give you really quickly about this to show you how egregious these things can be is, number one, I was informed by one of my DB2 Gold consultant colleagues that they actually did a breakdown of the cost justification, and the old wire telephone system that was used within the organization was actually charged as part of CPU seconds, and because technology 30 years ago, they had no place else to put it, so they started charging for the telephone systems within the mainframe. The other is a large financial services customer that we work with charged 10 times per gigabyte per month, 10 times as much for mainframe storage as they did for distributed storage, even when the same device was used in both places. So the same device was attached to their network for distributed systems, Linux systems, as was attached to the mainframe. But on the mainframe, they included the storage analyst salaries as part of the chargeback. So they were charging $15 per gigabyte per month on the mainframe, and about $1.50 per month for the same storage capacity, because they had included different things. The other question that you need to ask is, especially when you get the 3-year time frame, is what is migration actually going to cost? Has anybody said this is what it takes to get down the yellow brick road to the Emerald City of no more mainframe? Has anybody actually figured that out, or is somebody throwing darts at a board? So drill down on the cost estimates, and are they realistic? Those are the two financial things that I think you need to focus on. So an example of the actual costs, and this is not a precise comparison, because this is talking about steady movement of data off of these systems on a continuous basis as opposed to a one-time migration. But you can see that the ETL, the servers, all of the different components that are necessary to do the analytics on a non-mainframe platform, the estimated cost of moving 1 terabyte of data daily off of these systems can cost $10 million over 4 years. So that's quite an expense. And again, that's probably not being factored in to the discussion of, do we keep it on the mainframe or do we move it off? And it could be far more expensive than if you bought an IBM DB2 Analytics Accelerator, which you could get a very large, full rack for about $1 million. Yep. So much cheaper to keep the data in place, and you get all the data movement with that. You get the incremental update and the other components of IDEA. Kim?
Yeah, I think one of the most important questions to find out when you're starting to do an analysis like this is find out what you're paying for ETL on an annual basis. If you're paying, data stage is enormously expensive. All the ETL tools are expensive. So if you look at what you're paying for ETL on an annual basis, you might be able to cost justify an IDAA, which would allow you to eliminate the ETL and would also give you a modernization strategy for the mainframe to talk to your management about.
So I'm getting two questions from Luis Valdez. Is there a viable replacement for DB2 at all? In other words, can other databases even come close to the power, flexibility, and openness of DB2? So here is how I'm going to answer that question. I don't know of a lot of net new customers who are adopting the Z Systems platform today. In all honesty, IBM is selling to the base. Now, there are exceptions to that, especially in the developing world, because they are taking a longer view of their investments. I mentioned China before. China has a lot of growth in the Z Systems platform, but if we look at the Western world, I assume that most of the folks that are on this call today are based in North America, although we're not limited to that. But the idea would be, what's happening in North America? We're not as focused in a bake-off between a steady state Z Systems platform versus an Oracle Exadata supercluster. What we are focused on is, given the already existing install base of the Z Systems platform, what is the incremental cost to move, and what is the incremental benefit that you're going to derive from that? Again, to use the biblical allusions, the way the Judeo-Christian God was able to create the world in 7 days is he didn't have an install base. The Z Systems platform is a fact of life in virtually every shop for the folks that are on this call today. So the question is not comparing how much better one runs versus the other, as it is focused on, I have this today, how can I make best use of it?
And I think one of the other questions to keep in mind, the reality is, yes, Walmart is still running their business on a mainframe. They are not running it on Hadoop.
Correct. So now let's talk about the cloud. So IBM has a huge initiative in terms of development of cloud products and the deployment of customers' applications in the cloud. Azure from Microsoft, AWS from Amazon. This is a huge sea change in the way that people are delivering IT resources, and I understand that. One of the challenges that I've had with customers is when we were deploying traditional on-premises IT infrastructure, replication, and DB2, a lot of shops have a 60-day lead time to deploy a Linux server on the floor. I have one customer in the financial services industry in particular, but I think that is probably typical. So in terms of organizational agility, if I could say, instead of having to wheel in a box or put it in a rack or spin it up and get all the networking and the operating system installed and all the patches, I could just flip a switch and have something in the cloud within minutes or hours that does what I need to do. Doesn't that make more sense? So that's the compelling argument for the cloud, is that I can take away a lot of the vanilla infrastructure, lead time and cost, and only pay for what I need. The other thing that the cloud delivers are things like peak capacity. So if over the Christmas selling season that's coming up, my utilization increases 50%, if I did this on-prem, I would need to keep that 50% additional capacity on the floor at all times. If I could spin it up as needed with additional nodes during the Christmas selling season, might I be able to save money? So that's where, in my humble opinion, of where the cloud has its best argument. When we talk to CFOs, they look at the cloud differently. They look at it in terms of operating expense versus capital expense. So a brief primer, very brief because I'm not an accountant, but in terms of capital expense, if I buy a new piece of hardware or I license IBM software, I need to depreciate that over its useful life. So if I say that server will last over 3 years and I spend $50,000 on that server, I can, depending on a lot of different depreciation rules, expense that over the 3-year period, so I get $16,000 each year. So I spend the $50,000 in the first year, I write that check, but I can only expense it over the useful life of the asset. With operational expenses, and most cloud deployments are considered an operational expense that are invoiced at no longer than a year, and in some cases on a monthly or quarterly subscription basis. In that case, I can fully expense the money that I'm spending as I spend it. So the CFO looks at that and says, okay, that's a good thing. I can better my financial statements by moving to a different deployment mechanism for IT. So that's part of what's driving the bus. Again, I don't want to get too far down into the accounting, but that may be some of the reason that's driving that. So I have poll number 5 that I'm going to bring up right now. So the question is your organization running any monthly subscription-based applications such as software as a service in production in your organization? So are you using what is known as SaaS?
And 2 points I'd like to, while we're doing the poll. The first is that I have been told, and I haven't seen it done, but I have been told that if you finance a capital expense, like something like buying an IDAA, if you finance it and you lease it, that's exactly it. If you lease it, then you can actually write it off as an operational expense. Now, I don't know of any customers that have done that, but I have been told it is possible to do that. The second thing that I have been told, and this is also anecdotal, is that customers purchasing IBM's -DB product, which is supposedly a monthly subscription, are being asked to prepay a year in advance. And I'm not sure whether or not that then disqualifies your ability to write it off as an operational expense. But I think that's one of the challenges that we as IBM customers have when they're asking us to transition to cloud, to thinking things in cloud terms, is that some of it is still immature. Some of the actual administrative back end of how it works and making sure that you guys are able to take advantage of the financial write-off ability. I'm not sure that it's all baked.
I think you're right, Kim. And again, I know that we probably have very few CPAs on the call today, but it is important to understand what management is thinking and why they're making the decisions that they're making to help you make your case if you're involved in that discussion for how we can find a way to take advantage of that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so about 60-40. So about 40% are using some sort of SaaS within their organization today.
But 60% are not.
Correct.
Okay.
Not there yet. And that's consistent with what we heard at the World of Watson at the Break Free Forum, that a lot of customers are still struggling with infrastructure on-prem. They are not to the point where they're dipping their toe in the cloud.
But so if you do have a CFO who's talking about something like this, or you're hearing about using a SaaS application or using something in the cloud, if you would like to investigate the possibility of trying to do the leasing thing, let me know. It's something I've heard about, and I'd love to find out more, because I think it would be great to be able to have a response to that.
Thank you. So IBM actually helps you with all of these questions, the financial justification and the CapEx versus OpEx. It's something called an EAGLE study. It is a free IT economic study conducted by IBM. They will try to evaluate for you some of the items that we have talked about earlier in terms of the financial justification. So the total cost of ownership and the workload placement assessment. So what is the right platform to run certain workloads, your transaction processing, your analytics, etc. They will exploit, things like cloud, analytics, mobile, and social. So new applications that are coming along, not only the existing applications that you're running on the mainframe. And or is your mainframe, capable of supporting those types of new applications that you're being able to deploy? And then finally, a chargeback analysis, actually digging down into the CPU second and the DASD storage costing, and is that an accurate reflection of what it costs, and is that comparable to other charging mechanisms that you have within your organization? So you get that apples to apples comparison, and the end result is to quantify return on investment based on your customer information and costs. So this is not a white paper that is sort of general terms, but they actually come in and actually spend the time within your organization. So skills, we're gonna move to a different question. We've talked about the financial justification at length. One of the things that Kim likes to say about the consultants for the Fillmore Group who work on the mainframe is that we're in gray if we have hair at all, right?
Yeah.
In many cases bald. We have an aging workforce. The IBM is working to combat that with something called the academic initiative. There are courses that are being delivered and programs of study available at different universities. IBM is using this for themselves, where they're bringing in a lot of new hires. It's what is the program called when they bring on an intern and then the Vitality program.
Vitality program at one time.
Yeah, the Z Vitality program. But the idea is to bring in a new set of people who can carry the water in terms of Z mainframe skills. So keeping the systems running, whether it's DB2 for ZOS or WebSphere on Z, or even the COBOL and the JCL, the very basic stuff. These are people who are being trained. I'm going to talk in a second about some feedback that we've gotten from multiple different Gardner studies that we've evaluated. And the assessment there is that skills are a major focus and are probably not going to be solved by the marketplace. That is, that the market is not going to supply to meet the demand of Z system skills. This is something that companies need to focus on themselves, and what we've seen is among different Z organizations is poaching from among different organizations. They just go out and raid each other, and it's sort of a zero-sum game. So the academic initiative is there. We want you to be aware of it. You can certainly Google the academic initiative. There are programs in place to put courses of study within universities near organizations as long as they commit to hiring graduates. Kim, go ahead.
Yeah. I've been trying to work in the Baltimore, Washington area to get a college or university to support an academic initiative program, and we have been unsuccessful. I've been working at it for over 2 years. And one of the things, as Frank said, the reports and the analysts basically say, if you're a Z organization, you're on your own. And I think it's, in some ways, the message has to be to the people on this call, first of all, there is curriculum available. You guys all learned how to do what you're doing. In many cases, we all came up in business back in the day when you actually were allowed to go to training. There is courseware. That's one thing. The second thing is that, you know, mentoring programs work, and no one wants the hassle or you know, it's difficult to have someone following you around. But mentoring programs do work, and the organizations that have been most successful have actually implemented some sort of formal mentoring programs. And the third thing is Marist has been the most successful, and I do think there are actually a couple websites for the Marist graduates. So if you are looking for people, there are some resources outside of the academic initiative. Don't start digging.
Exactly. Thank you, Kim. Now, you've spent the last 50 minutes or so listening to our opinions. I wanted to share with you some studies done by Gardner over the last couple of years. So this is current as of about 2015. And the studies have been very interesting, and I've culled what I think are the most salient points that speak to some of the challenges that we've talked about so far. So the first one is in costs, and this goes back to the apples-to-apples comparisons. Many clients do not have a sufficient understanding of which applications or platforms are incurring what costs. This debate becomes based on anecdotal information, and that takes us right back to the mainframe is too expensive. We need to justify that. In terms of skills, the academic initiative, IBM has introduced the training in over 1,000 colleges and universities. Kim thinks that number is a little high, but I'm just quoting Gail Vecchio. The perspective these days seems to be that future employees learn their skills in universities or previous employment, but not through company-sponsored training, and it is the company-sponsored training that is probably going to solve the problem. You need to bite the bullet to bring in the next generation of specialists who know these systems. And workforce planning is critical to continuing on this platform. I'm working with a customer now that had 2 retirements within 6 months of each other, and there is currently a race against time to do some mainframe modernization. They are not moving off the mainframe, but we are moving to a new version of the DB2 database, which gives them greater capability. But everybody got old at the same time, and it's a demographic problem that they could have seen or probably did see and chose to ignore, and now they're paying the price for that. So it's a bad idea to just assume that it's going to take care of itself.
And it's difficult when you have an aging workforce because people, the older they get, the more money they make. So the perception within a company is we can't afford to give them more. And they think they're giving you more if they're doing training. But the reality is, if a company sets aside $50,000 a year, if they could run a boot camp once a year and bring in 3 new people, put them through the boot camp and probably get them baselined so that they could begin and be ready to, ready to actually contribute.
So I'm going to go ahead and try to go through these quickly, but these are a couple of different important points that I want you to understand. The one that I call technology debt. Many mainframe clients Gardner speaks to continue to struggle with older procedural languages and architectural styles and haven't shown significant effort to replace them. This is the 30-year-old transaction processing system written in COBOL CICS. This failure to modernize is not the fault of IBM, meaning that customers had a system for 30 years, they've made no significant effort to improve it or change it, and are now saying, because the furniture is old, we're going to sell the house. And that doesn't make any sense. The perceptions I mentioned before about the younger CIOs, and then finally, the last point, the enterprise architect role is the key to the evolution of this platform within mainframe organizations. The people who make the decisions as where to deploy workloads. We have a financial services customer that we talked to about this. We had a very good use case for using the IDA and DB2 for ZOS together. We went to the IT architect and actually got their buy-in successfully, and he was told by a higher up, we're not investing in that platform anymore. They were dead-ended. So let's talk about some of the migration challenges. Let's say you get the marching orders, we're going to move off the mainframe in the next 3 years. The lack of accurate documentation, in some case even the lack of source code. We're dealing with a number of customers now who only have object code that is executing today, and that works fine, but they have no way of knowing what their business logic is. One of the problems goes back to the technology debt, the out-of-support hardware and software. So customers are still running DB2 for ZOS version 7. And it becomes a very important question, do I try to do 3 upgrades, 8 skip migration to 10, and then 11? How do I deal with that? So you need to understand the cost and the time that it will take, as a colleague of mine, Jerry Hodges, said many times, in terms of DB2 version migrations, there aren't enough weekends to do all of the updates. One of the other things that's important to understand is the interdependence of the components on the mainframe. One of the things that we talk to customers all the time is the SAS extracts. This is not SAAS, this is SAS. The SAS program that does an extract that somebody does an FTP to another platform and actually allows them to do analytics. The JCL, the job scheduling, the integration with external systems, disaster recovery, all of these components need to be accounted for in any sort of migration. You can't ignore it, or you can ignore them at your own peril, but the idea is that all of these are costs that are outside the envelope of the specific day-to-day transaction processing systems that most people focus on. And this could be 50% or more of your migration, is to get all of these halo effects working together on a different platform. You also need to incorporate the service level agreements and performance requirements. CICS, 90% of my transactions need to run in 2 seconds or less. Can you replicate that level of transaction processing? We were talking to a customer who said they had a slideware presentation from another vendor that said, we're going to run a packaged application. I can't remember. It was SAP. We're going to run SAP on another platform, already running it on a Z today, and it works great. We're going to run it on this different platform, and nothing other than the PowerPoint to demonstrate that they could actually meet those SLAs. So the modernization alternatives. So one that I tout all the time is the commercial off-the-shelf software, and this may or may not run on Z, but it is certainly a viable alternative. We are working with a customer now that is a local government that runs their court systems. There are 5,000 counties in the United States. All of them have court systems of one effect or another. They all probably handle courts pretty much the same way. This is something that you need to seriously consider rather than the roll your own software that was developed 30 years ago. Again, this may be something that could run on a mid-tier platform and use the Z platform as a back-end data repository. But in terms of modernization, this is something that you need to consider. Z Linux, we were talking to an IBM executive, and he said, we just haven't seen the uptake of Z Linux working in collaboration with ZOS on the same frame, on the same platform together, but this is something that you can exploit with a wide variety of IBM software, such as DB2 for Z Linux with Blue Acceleration for columnar data. If you choose not to get an IDAA, coupling DB2 for ZOS and DB2 for Z Linux is a great way. Rewrite the custom applications, but use ZOS as a data server. So you could rewrite in Java or any number of current development environments that I showed earlier in the slides, the integrated development environments, Habatus and Hibernate. Those are viable solutions if you decide to replicate your existing business logic. We've had customers do this successfully. The development environment is a lot faster, but continue to leave the transaction processing on the mainframe and have the application server on a different platform, whether it's Z Linux or another mid-tier. And then finally add the IBM DB2 Analytics Accelerator. This works in terms of CPU offload. The high-performance storage saver is what I call the unsung hero of the IDAA. We have customers that are saving money by, instead of retaining 45 days worth of data that they have on DB2 for ZOS, they keep 5 years worth of data. They increase customer satisfaction. They increase their analytics capabilities, and they do it for a lot less than they pay for spinning disk on the mainframe.
Okay. I think we're out of time, Frank, but I think what we're going to do right now, we've got 4 slides left, so if you could just keep going.
Yeah, I'm gonna roll pretty quickly. Yes. So the important thing is to plan a Z-positive campaign. Gather your IBM team and your business partners. If you don't know who they are, we can help you find them. Include the latest and most accurate collateral. This presentation was first delivered a month ago at WOW, so it's current as of all the announcements that were made at World of Watson. Tailor the message to your management's concern. Is it skills? Is it financial justification? Is it that the mainframe is old? Try to bring back accurate cogent information that addresses those concerns, and then plan a date for your Z intervention so that you can you don't just wait till the inevitable happens. Each Z account has your IBM technical specialist. They may be known as client technical professionals, Z architects. You may have something called a lab advocate or your client execs. If you don't know who those people are in your organization, let us know. We can find out for you and bring them to the table. You want to be prepared. What questions will be asked? What backup do you need? There are a ton of great resources that we have listed here. The current Z Systems platform summary, which we delivered today, we can give you a much greater in-depth overview of the IBM DB2 Analytics Accelerator for analytics on Z. We can talk about the Z capacity, the resiliency, and the Linux integration. We've mentioned the Eagle study if this is something that you think would be important to your organization. There is a red book that I have included the link called Understanding Mainframe Economics. It's not one of those 500-page behemoths, but I can give you the names of the Gardner reports. I can't share the Gardner reports, but I can give you the names of those from which the quotes were withdrawn and enable you to see what independent analysts are saying, understanding the CapEx and the OpEx as it applies to the cloud, and then more details on the IBM Academic Initiative. So what does the Fillmore Group offer in addition to help with all those things before? You can see the world's most interesting man when he wants to stay relevant. He always keeps his versions current. The things that we can help you do are things like health checks, migration support, implementations, modernizations, education and training. The Fillmore Group is an authorized training partner, so if you see a class that you want to have delivered on the Z platform, we can help you with that. We can work on-site or remote. We deliver services at competitive rates, and we have retainer options for help on an as-needed basis.
And I think that's it. I think you have finished
I have
up.
One more,
you have one more poll here?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Do you know who to, I actually have 2 more polls that I'm going to bring up pretty quickly.
Okay.
Do you know who to call for help?
Yes, the first poll we're going to put up here is, do you know who to call for help? And I'm just curious to find out how many people know. Well, we got a 100% of yes right away, but no, a few people don't. All right. So the next poll is basically asking if you'd like us to help. And I think everyone here, if you have the next slide, will have probably my email address or Frank's email address, and I believe the webinar invitations and reminders had our email addresses in them. So please feel free to reach out. Basically, what I can do is connect you with your IBM team, and I'm not going to commit to exactly who that is because I have to go back to IBM and find out who it is. And
it changes recently. There's been a huge reorganization of realigning people, so that may be one of the reasons.
Yes, IBM has realigned their reps to cover industries rather than geography, so there is some difference.
And then the final question is, can the Fillmore Group be of assistance?
Yes, and please just let us know if we can help. I think you did a great job, Frank, and I hope everyone appreciates this. This is not the presentation you necessarily want to give to your boss, but I think it gives everyone a sort of a framework where we can begin the discussion and figure out how to structure the discussion so that we can be successful. And I hope everyone is successful.
Okay, and as we're letting for that poll to finish, we're a few minutes over. I want to see if there are any last questions that we can answer. Is the academic initiative in countries like India? And the answer is it is worldwide.
Yes.
So yes, the academic initiative, and as a matter of fact, the academic initiative is strongest, I believe, in places like Asia. I know China specifically, but I would assume India as well.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for your time today. I hope that you found this useful. Please reach out to us if we can be of any greater assistance, and enjoy the rest of your day.